our welcome note speaker. He has been a mentor to me, he has been an advisor, he has been a father for over 10 years now, since the very first time I met him. And every time I want to, I don't know if he probably doesn't know this, but every time I want to explain how big he is in Zimbabwe to someone, I just say, do you know the building called Mapondera town? People are like, yeah, the one near Mkwati. I'm like, yeah, that one. It's named after his great-grandfather. And he is one of the people that helped us enjoy the freedom that we have today as Zimbabweans. And his name is Mr. Mapondera. His name is Christopher Mapondera. So I invited him to come through to give us that context that we sometimes don't have as young people. I believe when you're building, the two main things that you need. You can be a great developer, you can be a great designer, a great digital marketer, but something else that really helps you as the context of knowing why you're doing this, where you're going to get. If you look at some of the problems, you're like, okay, when did this problem start? Because you have that context. So those two things are technical competency, which is what most of us have because we're super talented. The other thing is cultural competency, which is why when you look at everything that we have, it says the Pan-African freelance talent marketplace, because we know who we are. And we want to let everyone else know it's okay to say, I'm an African developer, I'm an African designer, and I'm really good at this. So without further ado, Mr. Mapondera.
Well, thank you so much. You want to appreciate how much I love having such sharp young people, beautiful, handsome, in front of me, breaking all the barriers that they are challenging us today. Anyway, as Tongai said, I've been a mentor to him. Let me just give you a little bit of my background. Maybe that may establish the relevance of me standing in front of you. I left Zimbabwe in 1965. As a 19-year-old, I was running away from Ian Smith. I was a teacher at the Highfield Community School, which is a school that had been created by the politicians. And that school catered for the radical students, or young people like yourselves at the time. Our mission at that time was to liberate this country. But at that time, we didn't know how to do it. We had a lot of conflict between ZAPU and ZANU, of which we were busy killing each other, destroying each other's properties. And that was a result of misguided political orientation. But as time went on, I went to Goromonzi School. I've got a few people here that went there, including Tongai, which I was quite fascinated that he went to my commerce school. When ZANU was formed in 1963, it was formed by young people who were saying the pace of political change in the approach that was being taken was going to take a long time. We felt we had had enough time trying to negotiate with white people for our own freedom. So we say the only language a white man can understand is the gun and the bullet, because that is what he used when he first came to our country. My grandfather, is not great-grandfather, but my grandfather, Chief Mapondera, is one of the 5 or so people whose heads are still in the British Museum because he fought and killed some of the invaders when they came to this country. He was one of the advisors for Mapondera. So when he was on his missions, he would always consult with Mapondera. As you know, Mapondera was a spirit medium. It was not a physical person. So after he had killed those white people, he had this magic, well, I call it magic, but whatever he was doing, you would see him on this side of the summer here. Then when white people were pursuing him, he would disappear, then the next thing is somewhere there. So they could not get him. So finally, Chief, the Barotsi king, you know, in Zambia, called him and said, hey, I can understand you're under a lot of pressure from these white people, why don't you come here? I don't know how those people communicated between Zambia and Zimbabwe, but the communication was there. So on his way there, the whites got to his village and said, okay, if you don't come back, we're going to kill all the kids. So he decided to come back. He said to himself, I cannot let my whole family die just because I want to save myself. I'd rather die and save my family. That is how he came back. Then he was put in prison. He was at the Harare, it was the remand prison, where he stayed for 7 years before he said, look, I cannot continue to be under bondage. So he basically almost stabbed himself to death. But rather than those captures, let him die a natural death out of hunger, they decapitated his head, then sent it to Queen Victoria. So, that's part of my background anyway. But coming back to 1963 when the ZALU was formed, it was formed by young people who had had enough of negotiating with white people. And when they started out, all the people were saying, hey, you people, young people, you are too ambitious. I don't think you can negotiate with white men and get the results that you want. But as time went on, as we became more political conscious, that is, finding out how other revolutions were taking place, how you define your political orientation and your political objective. It's one thing to talk about, I want to be free, but free to do what? And I'll come back to you on that point where I think we are still suffering to a certain extent the ambivalence of what freedom is all about and what running a country is all about. Okay. Now, just coming to a little bit of the relevance of why Tongai asked me to come here. Part of my history, after independence in 1980, I came back home. I was part of a Union Carbide group of young black executives who had come back home to make sure that if white people decided to leave this country, there'll be a group of young black people who can just fit in. But the funny part about it, when the Union Carbide approached me, I was working in New York City in 1977. They gave me a nice package, well, come and work for us and this and that about the future of Zimbabwe and so forth. So I was quite excited to join them. But I didn't realize that I was part of their own agenda, not my agenda. It only became clear after I came back that they had been projecting what is going to happen to their corporations in Zimbabwe when black people take over. They knew that most white people were going to run away and what would happen to their business interests. So they had to create this cadre of young black Zimbabweans. So there were quite a few of us. My background is kind of mixed. I'm an agronomist on one side, and I'm also a civil engineer and an environmental on the other. But from a professional point of view, when Union Carbide recruited me, I joined their metals division. And my training was based on what you call competency-based training. What that means that you can take anybody, regardless of background, and teach them to be competent in doing a specific task. That's how, like you see, the US Army or most of these sophisticated, military units, they'll get a Form 4 guy to go and operate the most sophisticated submarine or the most sophisticated piece of equipment, because they zero in on what do you need to know to operate that machine. That's what the competency-based learning is all about. You can be anything that you want to be if you zero in on what does it take for you to do that. So after independence, I came home. I came into a very hostile environment because those white people realized that, hey, this nigger is going to take our jobs. Huh? And they made life so difficult for me. Union Carbide was based in Kwekwe. I had spent 4 years in their smelting plants in Ohio, where most of the, chrome coming from Rhodesia then was being processed into ferrochrome. And for those of you who may know, ferrochrome is one of the elements for making steel. Okay? When you mix ferrochrome, manganese, nickel, and all that, you start making these special steels, which are used, for instance, in the rockets. They've got high resistance, corrosion resistance, heat resistance, all kinds of things. Okay? So our minerals have always played a very crucial role in the development of this whole space industry. Okay? Because when you have your rocket going to the moon or whatever, but on coming back, it is subjected to those severe conditions. The heat resistance, as heat comes down, it's very, very hot. The corrosion, and all kinds of things. So when I came, I had mastered the whole idea of how to utilize ferrochrome and making those special steels. So these white boys thought they wanted to put me to a test. So they gave me the building of a furnace in Kwekwe. I was the project engineer there. The first day I went there, I could see all these black workers coming. Oh, look, we've got a black engineer now. Or he's in charge. Is he going to do it and so forth? But I still proved them wrong that we got that furnace up and running. Okay. Let me bring some relevance to what I'm saying. Union Carbide realized that when the country transitions from white rule to black rule, there's going to be a deficiency in the manpower required to run their systems properly. In 1979, for the past 4 years or 5 years, the Americans and the British and the Europeans realized that Smith was not going to sustain the guerrilla warfare that was taking place in Zimbabwe any longer. They didn't think he was going to survive beyond 1980. So they started planning the transition from white rule to black rule. And they knew that no negotiations could be done with people who were in prison. So Smith was forced to get Mugabe and others out. So they go to Lancaster House and start negotiating the transition. As far as we were concerned as black people, we were prepared to go for another 20 years of fighting if it was necessary. That was our mindset. We did not have the time to figure out, okay, after we defeat these white people and how are we going to defeat them and what is going to happen when that happens. We did not have the time to do so. So all of a sudden, you can imagine the euphoria. Mugabe, Nyagombo, and all these guys were in jail. They had been in jail for 9-10 years. All of a sudden, Chibudai, Magwenda to London. What is going on? Yeah? There was no time to mobilize all the manpower that we had. You know, isu tangati ku US, amangari ku China, kupi, kute, vagoman. We've got this thing happening now. Takuno negotiate na arungu titiete. Tuane kujitonga kwa tanga chirwira kwego. We did not have time for that. Okay? So, because of that, we had to assemble people quickly. And many people had to volunteer to go and join Lancaster House. Vangari my lawyers, yeah, okay, whatever role you had, you just had to go and put yourself there to see how we can help out. Okay? So kuti tuane time utoke kana tinge taita free, tichaita Zimbabwe kaita say we did not have the time to do so. And I must confess kuti pakanzi ta free na 1980, we all came with different views of what it was all about. Isusu tangati kuma Western countries, we loved communism and socialism because we had seen the evils of capitalism in America and Europe and the UK. Because we don't want this for our country. But our colleagues from Eastern Bloc countries, they saw how evil communism and socialism was all about. And they were saying, we don't want to see this for Zimbabwe. Now, atinamboita time atakagara pasi ko shamwariwo ku Russia zvaifamba sei, iwo ku US zvaifamba sei, tozvisanganisa sei to run an effective Zimbabwe. We didn't have the time to do so. Vamwe takavachiti ndakuzoendesa vana vedu kuzvikoro zvevarungu. Vamwe ndakuzonoroora misisi ndisingasungwe. You know, so we had a lot of misconceptions of what, you know. And then because we vangari military, vazhinji vangoti takuzoita masergeant manyowani and all that. And all kinds of things. Unlike what is happening today, China realized that 20 years from now, their kids are going to be competing with kids in Africa, in USA, in China, in Asia, and anywhere. So if you go to America today, you've got millions of Chinese students in American universities. From Harvard, Caltech, to a small community college in a very nondescript town in America. And why is China doing that? They know that 20 years from now, there's going to be a kind of economy that is going to be based on technology. So you need your kids to speak the same language, whether it is from China, from Germany, from USA, whatever. Those kids, if they're at MIT today, 20 years from now, they'll be talking to their counterparts who are Americans, who also went with them to MIT, or who went with them to the London School of Economics or whatever and so forth. All right? Now, as Zimbabweans, we didn't do that during our independence. Could now, 1980, what sort of Zimbabwe are we going to have in 2023? How are our kids going to be competing with the kids from USA, from China, from wherever? Okay? And there's also the question of the transformation of the world economies. Kudara, we're very much agrarian. We're dependent on what we had from the soil, but we're also just looking at the very subsistence levels. And then we have gone through cycles of development, from mass production, creation of GMOs, because we want to get maximum, stuff out of our fields and so forth. But that is now coming back. It's more expensive to eat organic food in America than to eat GMO food. Why is it so expensive? Because it costs more to produce unadulterated food than it does to eat processed food. But when you eat organic food, buying from an American supermarket, it may be a little bit expensive, but when you eat those other banana, KFC, nanani, and so forth, vanema GMO huku nechi mafuta anenge akabikwa 20 times uchingoya chingodya and so forth. It's cheap food, but you're going to pay a price for it because you're going to have all kinds of diseases. You see? If you see the image of my grandfather, is nothing but muscle, bone, and a little bit of flesh. Very healthy. Because all these poisons that we are being subjected to in the name of civilization. But our orientation, the more white meat food you eat, the more sophisticated you are. But those white people are beginning to realize, no. You are not cancer, BP, chi. So they're coming to understand and learn how we eat. Okay? So there's this misconception that the more educated I am, the more white I am, the better I am. They're coming back to learn those things that they are running away from. Okay? So I know my task is a little bit difficult. I'm also a very good talker. I can spend the whole day talking. But I just want to really summarize all these things with you. Each generation has got its mission. 400 years ago, the generations were busy fighting slavery when the whites were invading Africa, getting human resources and taking them away. In the 1900s, Vanana Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, and Dr. Agri of Africa and everything, they started talking about the Pan-Africanism. That is good. Look, we're all Africans. We have to start defining our destination. That's why I find the first Pan-African Congress took place in England in the 1900s. When Nana Dubois, Nana Marcus Garvey, and so forth, and a few of our African intellectuals participated. But Pan-Africanism started from the West, from the Nana Dubois and so forth, who could see Kuti Varungu had decided to change the face of Africa. But our own African people, they could not see it that way. But slowly they could see what their counterparts were saying. And then after that we come to my 1950s, when a transitional period, where we're saying, hey, we want to have our own political parties and start defining our own political destinies as well. That's why I find the formation Nana National Democrat. Actually, it was the African National Congress, which was started in South Africa, and then it became, in Zimbabwe, had an African National Congress, Zambia, they did that, and so forth. That came about simply because those leaders, they're all in the same institutions in South Africa. Then in Zimbabwe, transitioned into another NDP, National Democratic Party, another ZAPU, ZANU, and all that. Okay? So, the 50s, we were trying to define ourselves politically. And then in the 60s, we say, no, to hell with all this negotiation. Okay, until we won. Okay, now, as I said, we did not really have enough time to plan with the Zimbabwe Chai Famba say. We are still in a evolving condition. Okay? But our mission was to liberate the country. I think we did it. But we did not complete everything, which was changing the mind. See, we still have a lot of our people who have got a lot of inferiority complex. We've got to start building that self-confidence. Okay? So, Imimi, your mission, as I see it, it has to be technology-based, because that's what you're going to be competing with. Nina could survive in kind of reserve and Kandorima and so forth. But you are not going to survive that way. You're going to have to use your mind. But what sort of orientation are you going to have? How are you going to adopt and adapt technology for the benefit of yourself and the generations to come? How are you going to cope with guys that you are going to be competing with? Right now, for a long time, we didn't know it was lithium, which could be utilized, for the electrical vehicles and this and that and so forth. But we had the resources here. Our educational system was based on making us very good workers and servants, but not thinkers. Where we would look at our resources. We're not taught geology. We're not taught the applications of physics, chemistry, and so forth. Okay? I deal with so many young people here. One of my portfolios, I'm the Global Director for Mining, Minerals, and Engineering and Industry for an organization called African Diaspora Development Institute, formed by a Zimbabwean lady, Dr. Arikana Chiwombori Kwao. And our main mission is to try and link the African diaspora with the African continent. Because most of the big brains and top brains, African brains we have, are overseas. There are more Nigerian doctors in New York City than you have in the whole of Nigeria. there are more young Zimbabwean techies in the USA probably than you have here. But the few that we have in USA, every US corporation, technical corporation, has got a Zimbabwean and operating at very high levels, you know, at Microsoft, Tesla. My own son works for Amazon. He's a techie guy as well. But I know there are so many others. But the whole idea, Imimi, what linkages do you have with your counterparts overseas? And that's one of the things that we are trying to do with the African Development Foundation. You can go and check our website. It's ouraddi.org. It's run by, you know, the head of it is a Zimbabwean lady. She's a medical doctor, very successful. She was the first AU ambassador to the USA. Then my other portfolio, I'm the co-founder of Bit Mari, which we now call Bill Mari. My partner, based in the USA, we first applied blockchain technology in money transfer. We realized that Western Union, MoneyGram, they're making a lot of money out of us. Can you imagine the Zimbabwean diaspora will send home about $2 billion a year, okay? If you pay 10% to Western Union in MoneyGram, what is 10% of $2 billion? That's $200 million, right? That's a lot of bread right there. So our idea was to say, hey, why should we let these white people get all our money? Okay? With blockchain technology, what we were able to prove, we worked for 9 months with the Agribank at the time, to send money. If I wanted to send $20 home, it would cost me between $5 and $7 to do so. If I used Western Union or MoneyGram. But with the blockchain technology, we proved that I could send $20 for 20 cents to Zimbabwe. Okay? And what does $20 do to an average person at home? Yeah? You can go to work 50 cents every day, right? And back. Let's take even, which will pay out $2 per sondo. So that's $10. Usara wini dzimwe $10, unotenga hufu $3, 10 kgs. For a family of 4, munopedza sondoresa muchidya sadza. Muriwo kanotenga chibunch. Yes, ndineka price ndotengesa muriwo wakaita so for $1. I know for a family of 2, anodya for 2-3 days. Yeah? West side of Vipa side, south 50 cents, and all that. So with $20, we proved that a family of 4 can actually survive on $20 per week, if not more. But by so doing, we were now disturbing the status quo. Banana Union, Western Union definitely would protest that time. Unlike in Latin America or South America, where we call them Latinos in USA, they are in USA by the millions. They used to depend on Western Union for some time, until they say one day, hey, why are we giving our money to these white people? Why can't we do it ourselves? So you see by money transfer Kamazanana, Rea, and so forth. These were created by Latin American guys. Say, hey, inini mari ndeyangu, why should I use somebody else kutumira mari kuna ambu yangu? Let me do it myself. But because there are so many of us, let's put the organization to do it. All right? So I think for what you guys are doing, which I think is very exciting, that you have to start looking at technology from a different point of view. Zimbabwe has only 14, 15 million people. It's not an attractive market per se, if you want to be very real about it. But when you look at SADC, it's 365 million people. It's a larger population than the whole of USA. When you look at the whole of Africa, it's 1.4 billion people. Okay? So you guys have to start thinking outside of just Zimbabwe. You have to look at the whole continent. That's why China is such a successful nation, because it's 1.4 billion people. And everybody's flocking there. For Africa, I've got 600 million young people that everybody is running after. That's why I find Microsoft, Facebook, all banana, Twitter, all those guys, they are now coming to Africa. It's not because they love you or love us, because they know they can make money here. 600 million people, that's one good single market you can deal with. Okay? But it's also because of orientation at China, we don't look at it that way. We are busy with and so forth. So we've got to change our mindset. Okay? Don't look at solving a problem here in Zimbabwe, look at the whole continent, look at the region and so forth. And one thing that I noticed, I had to go through the same thing. We do tend to look down upon ourselves so much and look down upon each other. We don't trust each other. We don't glorify the accomplishments that we make. And we don't want to work together as well. Okay? So the challenge, is to change that dynamic. Don't think to where you can make the $1 by yourself, but if you think, okay, if there are 10 of you, maybe make $10 billion. So there's enough money for everybody to live comfortably. No, no. No, we've got to change that. Okay? And that can be changed when you use technology. If you use technology properly. Okay? So I'm quite excited to see that there's quite a number of you, both girls, women, men, boys, and so forth, getting involved into technology. That is the only way we can leapfrog ourselves. Kudara, telephone yangu ichingonzi je varungu cheteka. Kwainge kuine murungu 1 anenge ari kwadoti toko. Oskonzi rainoenda rese ikoko. But pakati pesapa there are millions of people, they don't get anything to do. So guys, I just want to wish you a very successful summit, and I hope my few words will encourage you to look at life differently, and that you become the pioneers and the leaders of Africa to advance technology. What you are doing as freelancing, it's something that you actually have a monopoly on. You can have a monopoly on it. My Indians were doing it, but they are losing their market because the market level, they can't understand my Indians are Chitauras. But I mean, they can understand you better. Okay, so anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. Tongai will have my contacts. You can always get in touch with me or through my sister right here. You can just go to our office, you'll have my details and so forth. Thank you so much.
Do you bring this?